In 1984, Lisa and Tom, the unforgettable couple of their small town, vanished on a chilly prom night. 15 years later, Lisa's father found a tape. That tape revealed the betrayal of their closest friend. What was this dark secret? Willow Creek, Ohio, was a postcard of small-town America in the spring of 1984. Maple trees lined Main Street, their leaves catching the golden light of late May. The air carried the scent of fresh-cut grass and blooming lilacs. Lisa Thompson, just 17 years old, was the town's darling. Her bright smile warmed customers at Rosie's Diner, where she worked weekend shifts, balancing plates of pancakes and pouring coffee with ease. Her laughter was infectious, her hazel eyes sparkling with dreams of college and a life beyond the factory town. Tom Harper, Lisa's partner, was the high school quarterback, a local hero with a quick grin and a kind heart. His letterman jacket was a badge of pride, but he wore it lightly, always stopping to help a neighbor or joke with the kids at the park. On prom night, the Willow Creek High Gymnasium transformed into a glittering wonderland. Disco balls spun, casting flecks of light across the polished floor. Lisa's lavender dress hugged her frame, the tulle skirt swaying as she danced. Tom, dashing in a rented tuxedo, spun her under the lights, their classmates cheering. They were crowned prom king and queen, a moment etched in every onlooker's memory. The crowd roared as Tom lifted the crown onto Lisa's head, their hands entwined. Everyone said they were destined for a storybook life, marriage, kids, a white picket fence. But by midnight, their borrowed Chevy Impala sat abandoned on Route 17, a lonely stretch of road flanked by cornfields. The keys dangled in the ignition, the driver's door ajar. No footprints marked the dusty gravel. No witnesses came forward. No ransom note arrived. The town mobilized, search parties fanning out into the woods and fields. Flyers with Lisa's and Tom's smiling faces plastered every telephone pole, storefront, and bulletin board. The police interviewed classmates, teachers, and family, but found no leads. Lisa's father, Robert Thompson, a factory worker with weathered hands and a quiet demeanor, spent his nights driving the back roads, his flashlight sweeping the darkness, calling Lisa's name. Tom's father, Richard Harper, a wealthy businessman who owned half the town's real estate, funded private investigators and wept at press conferences, his tailored suits a stark contrast to his grief-stricken face. Weeks turned to months, then years. The case grew cold, a wound that festered in Willow Creek's heart. Robert never stopped searching, his life consumed by the loss of his only child. His wife, Linda, left 2 years after the disappearance, unable to bear the weight of hope and despair. Robert moved into a small apartment, keeping Lisa's room untouched, a shrine of her senior photo, her favorite scarf, her dog-eared copy of The Outsiders. Richard, meanwhile, retreated into his mansion, his public mourning giving way to a stoic silence. The town whispered about the tragedy, but life moved on. 15 years later, in the autumn of 1999, Robert stood in a crumbling warehouse on the edge of town. The factory where he'd worked for 2 decades had shut down, a victim of the economic decline that had gutted Willow Creek. The 1980s had been brutal layoffs, foreclosures, and shuttered businesses left the town hollowed out. Robert was tasked with clearing out old equipment, his breath visible in the chilly air. The warehouse smelled of mildew and rust, its concrete floor cracked from years of neglect. Among a pile of broken crates and rusted tools, he found a cardboard box, its edges softened by time. Inside, buried under a tangle of wires, was a VHS tape. The label, scrawled in black marker, read 1984 night. Robert's heart stuttered. He hadn't seen a VHS tape in years, but something about this one felt ominous. He slipped it into his jacket, the weight pressing against his chest, and drove home. Robert's apartment was a time capsule of grief. Lisa's senior photo smiled from the mantel, her hazel eyes bright with promise. Her scarf hung by the door, its faint lavender scent long gone. He hadn't remarried, unable to move past the loss of his daughter. The old VHS player, a relic from better days, hummed as he inserted the tape. Static crackled across the screen of his ancient TV. Then Lisa's face appeared, and Robert's world collapsed. The footage was grainy, the colors faded by time. Lisa and Tom sat in the backseat of a car, their prom outfits crumpled. Lisa's lavender dress was torn at the shoulder, her face pale. Tom's tie hung loose, his jaw clenched. Richard Harper leaned through the driver's window, his voice calm but cold as steel. "It's done, Tom. They'll take her tonight. You'll walk away." Lisa's eyes widened, her voice trembling with fear. "What are you talking about?" Tom gripped her hand, his knuckles white. "Dad, what's going on?" Richard's smile was thin, almost cruel. "You'll understand one day, son. She's not for you. She's not our kind." The camera shook, as if held by an unsteady hand. Richard stepped back, and two men in dark jackets appeared from the shadows. They yanked Lisa from the car, her screams piercing the night. Her heels scraped the gravel as she fought. Tom lunged after her, but one of the men struck him with a fist, sending him sprawling. The screen cut to black. Robert's coffee mug slipped from his hand, shattering on the linoleum floor. His chest tightened, his breath coming in short, ragged gasps. The tape resumed, the scene shifting to a dimly lit warehouse. The walls were concrete, stained with damp. Lisa was tied to a metal chair, her wrists bound with coarse rope. Tears streaked her face, smudging her makeup. The men circled her, their laughter sharp and predatory. One, a burly man with a scarred face, reached for her dress, tearing the fabric further. Lisa flinched, her voice breaking. "Please, stop, please." Tom burst into the frame, blood dripping from a gash on his temple. This wasn't the deal. He shouted, his voice raw with desperation. "You said you'd let her go." He charged at the scarred man, fists swinging. The second man, lean and wiry, drew a knife from his belt. A scuffle erupted, chaotic and blurred. The knife flashed in the dim light, and Tom staggered, clutching his chest. Blood seeped through his fingers. He fell to his knees, his eyes locked on Lisa. "I'm sorry," he whispered, his voice barely audible. Lisa's screams filled the air as the screen went dark again. Robert sat frozen, the silence deafening. His hands shook, his mind reeling. Richard Harper, his friend of 20 years, had done this. They'd shared beers at barbecues, fished together on lazy Sundays, stood side by side at candlelight vigils for their children. Richard had held Robert's hand when the police called off the search, his voice thick with false grief. It was all a lie. Robert's anger surged, a white-hot flame in his chest. He ejected the tape, his hands trembling so badly he nearly dropped it. He needed to get it to the police, but first, he had to confront Richard. He grabbed his coat and drove to the Harper mansion, a sprawling estate on the edge of town. The manicured lawn and gleaming windows mocked Robert's modest life. Richard answered the door, his smile practiced but strained. "Robert, what brings you here so late?" Robert held up the tape, his voice steady despite his rage. "Found something you might recognize." Richard's eyes flickered, his smile faltering for a split second. They sat in Richard's study, a room of polished oak and leather-bound books. A bottle of expensive whiskey sat on the desk, untouched. The VHS player hummed as Robert inserted the tape. Richard watched, his face unreadable, his hands folded in his lap. When the footage ended, he leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. "Where'd you get this?" he asked, his tone as calm as if discussing the weather. Robert's anger erupted. "You sold my daughter. You let your own son die." Richard sighed, his eyes cold. "You don't understand, Robert. The factory layoffs hit us hard. I was drowning in debt millions. The banks were closing in. They offered me a way out. Lisa was collateral. Tom wasn't supposed to be there. He got in the way." Robert lunged across the desk, grabbing Richard's collar. "Where is she?" Richard shoved him back, his composure cracking. "I don't know. They took her. That's all I know." "You think I wanted this?" Robert's fist clenched, but he stopped himself. He needed answers, not a fight. He stormed out, the tape clutched tightly, and drove to the Willow Creek police station, his heart pounding with fury and fear. At the station, the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a harsh glow on the linoleum floor. Detective Karen Walsh, a veteran officer with graying hair and eyes that had seen too much, met Robert in a cramped interview room. She listened as he recounted finding the tape, his voice breaking with every word. Karen played the footage, her jaw tightening as Lisa's screams echoed through the room. "We'll bring Richard in," she said, her voice firm but gentle. "But the syndicate, they're shadows. We've heard whispers of a trafficking ring in the Midwest, moving girls across state lines. No hard evidence until now." Richard was arrested that night, his lawyer already waiting at the station. In the interrogation room, Richard sat calmly, his suit immaculate. "The tape is a fake," he said, his voice smooth as silk. "Someone's trying to frame me." Karen leaned forward, her eyes hard. Tom's blood wasn't fake. Lisa's screams weren't fake. Richard's lawyer interjected, demanding his release, but Karen had enough to hold him for 48 hours. The police dug into Richard's life, peeling back the layers of his carefully crafted facade. Bank records from 1984 showed large, untraceable cash deposits, tens of thousands of dollars, far more than his real estate business could account for. Phone logs linked him to known criminals in Cleveland, men with ties to organized crime. Karen uncovered a pattern. Richard had been a middleman brokering deals for the syndicate. Lisa wasn't the first girl he'd handed over, but she was the one who broke the case open. Karen kept Robert updated, meeting him at Rosie's Diner, where Lisa's old co-workers still hung her photo on the wall. "We're looking, Robert," Karen said over coffee, her voice heavy. "But it's been 15 years. She may not be." She trailed off, but Robert understood. He refused to believe Lisa was gone. Robert's days became a blur of searching. He combed through old newspapers at the library, looking for mentions of missing girls. He drove to Cleveland, tracking down addresses from Richard's phone logs, but found only dead-ends, abandoned buildings, and wary locals. He visited the warehouse again, hoping for more tapes, but found only dust and cobwebs. The town buzzed with gossip, old friends avoiding his gaze at the grocery store. Ellen Harper, Richard's wife, came to his apartment one evening, her eyes red from crying. "I didn't know," she whispered, clutching a tissue. "I thought Tom and Lisa ran off together." Richard said they wanted a fresh start, away from this town. Robert believed her. Ellen had loved Lisa, baking her cookies, attending her school plays, treating her like a daughter. Did he ever mention a syndicate? Robert asked. Ellen shook her head. He kept his business private. "I never asked." The investigation stalled. Richard was released on bail, his lawyer spinning a tale of entrapment. The tape, he claimed, was doctored, a cruel attempt to ruin a grieving father. Robert attended every court hearing, watching Richard's smug face as he dodged questions. The town split. Some believed Richard was a monster. Others thought Robert was obsessed, chasing ghosts. Karen's team worked tirelessly, but the syndicate was elusive, their operations buried under layers of false names and offshore accounts. Robert's hope flickered, but he never stopped. He kept Lisa's scarf on his dashboard, a reminder of why he fought. Years passed, each one heavier than the last. Robert aged, his hair graying, his shoulders stooping under the weight of grief. He took a job as a night watchman, the quiet hours giving him time to think, to plan. He wrote letters to Lisa, tucking them into a shoebox under his bed. "I'm still looking," he wrote. "I'll never stop." He visited Route 17, staring at the spot where the Chevy was found, the cornfields now overgrown. He attended community meetings, asking for tips, but the town had moved on. Lisa and Tom became a cautionary tale, a story whispered to teenagers about the dangers of the world. In the summer of 2010, a breakthrough came. Federal agents raided a compound in West Virginia, dismantling a human trafficking ring that had operated for decades. The news broke on CNN, grainy footage of SWAT teams storming a fortified farmhouse. Among the survivors was a woman in her early 40s, her hair streaked with gray, her eyes hollow. Her name was Lisa Thompson. Karen, now retired but still following the case, called Robert at midnight. "She's alive," she said, her voice thick with emotion. They found her in West Virginia. Robert's knees buckled. He drove 12 hours to the hospital, his hands shaking on the wheel, Lisa's scarf clutched in his lap. At the hospital, Lisa sat in a sterile room, staring out a window at the parking lot. Her face was gaunt, her skin pale from years indoors. She didn't recognize Robert at first, her eyes distant, like she was looking through him. "Dad," she whispered finally, her voice fragile, barely audible. Robert fell to his knees, wrapping her in his arms. Tears soaked his shirt as he held her, the weight of 15 years lifting and breaking all at once. Lisa's story emerged in halting fragments, pieced together over weeks. After Tom's death, the syndicate had moved her across state lines, from Ohio to Kentucky, then West Virginia. She'd been sold to a network of safe houses, forced into servitude, her identity stripped away. They told her her family was dead, that no one was looking for her. She'd survived by shutting down, burying her memories of Willow Creek under layers of pain. Lisa's recovery was slow. She flinched at loud noises, woke screaming from nightmares of Tom's death. Robert took her to a new house, far from Willow Creek's ghosts. He cooked her favorite meal, spaghetti with meatballs, just like when she was a kid. He read her The Outsiders, her voice joining his for the familiar lines. Therapy helped, but the scars were deep, etched into her soul. Lisa spoke of Tom often, his courage in those final moments. "He fought for me," she said one night, her eyes glistening. "He didn't deserve to die." Robert held her hand, his heart breaking for the boy who'd loved his daughter. Richard's trial began in 2011, a media circus that drew reporters from across the country. The Willow Creek Courthouse, a squat brick building, was packed with onlookers. Robert sat in the front row, the VHS tape now verified by forensic experts as authentic. Lisa testified, her voice quiet but steady. She described the night of the abduction, Tom's desperate fight, the years of captivity. Richard's lawyer tried to discredit her, painting her as unstable, but the jury saw through the lies. The tape was played in court, Lisa's screams filling the room. Jurors wept. Richard sat stone-faced, his eyes fixed on the floor. Karen, called as a witness, detailed the investigation, linking Richard to the syndicate through bank records and phone logs. Other victims came forward, their stories echoing Lisa's girls taken from small towns, sold into a network that spanned states. The syndicate's leaders were tracked down, their safe houses raided. Richard was sentenced to life without parole, his wealth no match for the evidence. The judge's gavel fell like a hammer, and Robert felt a weight lift, though the pain remained. The town grappled with the truth. Richard's mansion was sold, Ellen moving to a small apartment, unable to face the community's judgment. She visited Lisa, bringing a photo album of Tom's childhood. "He loved you," she said, her voice breaking. Lisa nodded, clutching the album. Willow Creek erected a memorial for Tom, a simple plaque by the high school field where he'd played. Lisa visited it once, tracing his name with her finger. Robert and Lisa rebuilt their lives, step by painful step. They moved to a coastal town in Maine, where the ocean's rhythm soothed Lisa's nightmares. Robert worked as a handyman, his hands still steady despite his age. Lisa enrolled in community college, studying art, her sketches filled with images of the sea and Tom's face. She smiled more often, though the shadows never fully left her eyes. One evening, as they sat on their porch watching the sunset, Lisa took Robert's hand. "Thank you for never giving up," she said. Robert squeezed her hand, his voice thick. "You're my daughter. I'd search forever." The scars remained, but so did their bond. Lisa's laughter, once lost, began to return, soft at first, then stronger. Robert knew the road ahead was long, but they walked it together, their love a light in the darkness. This story uncovered a father's betrayal and another's unbreakable love. Do you think Lisa can reclaim her life after 15 years of darkness? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Subscribe for more stories that reveal the truths hidden in plain sight.
Thank you for watching our channel Modern Stories. If you liked our video, you should subscribe for more amazing videos like this. Have a healthy and happy day. See you in the next one.